Alright guys, HyDra back again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. The moment we've all been waiting for in the competitive Call of Duty scene for some time may well be upon us, with the OpTic Dynasty podcast or roundtable finally arriving, it seems, and was recorded, it seems, a few days ago at this point. Crimsix, after all the discussion over the last couple of years that he would never do this and would only do it if it was on his own personal channels, seems to have changed his mind despite some very spicy comments in recent days about OpTic as an organization. What do you guys think about this? What would you like to see them discuss? Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new, as always. I greatly appreciate it. First of all, just wanted to give an update on, because I wasn't really going to mention this the other day, but I did because there was some drama. And, you know, it's another one of these, like, blockchain projects, which they've skipped all the steps of people getting screwed over. They've just gone straight to postponing it. So eFuse, one of the big organizations, the kind of tournament organizers, shall we say, that run events and stuff, they laid off a load of employees yesterday. So wishing everyone the best there, because, yeah, there was a serious round of layoffs. It's happening everywhere now, and even organizations such as eFuse are being heavily affected. Now, they were making this Creator League actually happen. If you guys didn't see this the other day, this Creator League caused a bit of controversy because they had, the OpTic guys, Hex and Scump, and they're like Bella Porsche and iShowSpeed, and it was all a bit strange, to be honest. And the idea is you can pay like $20 to play for your creator's team in the league, and I didn't really understand it fully, but kind of what they were doing was they were using like the blockchain to determine who owns the rights to these tokens to actually play. So they weren't exactly like NFTs, but the word NFT and blockchain were thrown around, and therefore people were like, oh, steer clear of this, including one of the creators that actually was initially involved that said, I didn't realize how, involved the blockchain was, so I'm getting out of it type thing. And, so now they've laid off a load of employees, and they're basically saying, we're going to have to postpone this. It's been, like 3-4 days since this was confirmed, and now they're like, yep, we're going to call it a day for now. We will come back and maybe do it better in the future. But they say that if you did buy one, you can request a refund, which is good. So I don't think this is a negative announcement necessarily, but it's just kind of crazy that this Creator League gets a lot of hype. Mr. Beast has like orchestrated this, has he not? But now it's all of a sudden off the table for the immediate term at the very least. And I also wanted to mention this real quick for you guys, because every so often we hear discussions about salaries, what players are making and what they're making now compared to what they used to make. There's been lots of talk lately about some organizations, the likes of obviously OpTic and FaZe and even Boston, still paying big money, Toronto, New York, certainly for the new season. But some organizations will be cutting back, and some have gone to the minimum already or will do so for the upcoming year. Just to show what a crazy time 2020 was here for the esports world, is what OpTic Maniac has to say while discussing one of the players that joins that Florida Mutineers team. So if you guys don't know, OpTic Maniac, who of course hosts the Flycast with Hitch, was actually a substitute for the Florida Mutineers way back in 2020 for, I still don't understand exactly why, and then they got him back to OpTic, and there was that moment, and he went to rehab and all the content that was around that, and really great for Maniac that he's doing great today. But what he mentions is that at the time, there was a player that had just joined the team, his first year in the league. I'm guessing this is Awakening, that was making 200k.
I think Zuma said he went from 4k a month to 20k
in 3 years.
And that was years ago.
Yeah.
And it only increased since. I know someone on Mutineers, when I was on Mutineers, was getting paid 200 as their first season as a pro.
That is...
And I was just like, dude, what the
That's what I'm saying.
And I'm sure now he's over 300.
So the crazy thing about this is, for me, is that Florida have not been, okay, they're now Miami Heretics, but at the time it was Florida Mutineers. They've not been a big spender org, I didn't think, really. Like, the first year of the league, yes, they had Skyz, Awakening, like, obviously Pharaoh, rest in peace, Frosty, and their Havoc, right? And they made some changes with Rossini early on. So they were a good team. But I thought Misfits, who kind of owned over there, were never a big spending team. And to be fair, 200k for Awakening isn't even, you could argue, big spending compared to what some of these other teams are paying for their guys. But that's pretty crazy to think, right? This guy comes in, no one had really ever even heard of Awakening before he joined this team. They bring him into the lineup, and he's making, what, 200k on average? And maybe he didn't play the whole year, so I wonder how much of that he got. And Maniac was like, yeah, he must be making 300k now. Like, I don't think that's the case, necessarily. But he's joining Minnesota. We don't really know what they're paying at the moment. Things have gone down, and we heard the rumors that the salary that Thieves are paying this season is not minimum, but it's more like league average. And that's more like, 120, something like that, possibly. So just goes to show how things have changed over time, and especially for Florida, because I never thought Florida, paid anything crazy. They didn't pay the minimums exactly, but, Misfits have always been not exactly a budget organization, but I think they've been a little bit more caring of their finances than some of these other organizations have been. But I think that Awakening came in straight away, at least according to Maniac, and was getting paid 200k is pretty crazy for your first year in the league as a rookie. But let's talk about it then, because yesterday this was first leaked really by OpTic on their, well, not really leaked I suppose, because they just revealed it, but nonetheless they put it on their Instagram story, I think, and then they put it on Twitter itself with, look at this stuff, absolutely fantastic. We can see the 4 Dynasty members. We've got FormaL on the left hand side, Scump in the middle here, Karma, and then Crimsix, and then we have Hitch actually hosting the show. So this is not the podcast per se, but this is I think what they do as the roundtable, like the Legends roundtable type thing. And Hitch actually confirms that this is not going to be exclusive to OpTic Nation. He said, we'll actually see it in a second here, that there might be an extended cut of this that goes on the OpTic Nation paid thing, but it's not going to be Nation exclusive. It's the inner circle, they call it. Not a Nation show. It will be available to absolutely everyone to watch. We can also see here some things that he had to bring up in the podcast itself between these guys. But man, we've been waiting for this for literally years. Ever since the OpTic Dynasty collapsed during 2018 when Karma was effectively dropped, FormaL wanted to be gone. He got out of there, went to Luminosity Gaming, and yes, Karma came back eventually. Even FormaL came back eventually because, he returned for the OpTic Chicago days and Chicago Huntsman before then. Crimsix after Black Ops 4 though was never really back in the family, and it's Crim that has been the main, issue, right, with allowing this to happen over the last couple of years. COD fans have wanted this pretty much ever since all of these guys retired, and especially ever since, I would say, FormaL retired, and especially when Crim stepped away at the end of 2022, people were like, damn, come on, let's get this Dynasty podcast rolling, because, everyone wants to know about the stories that these guys had from back in the day. There's so many great moments from that team's history, obviously discussing when they almost broke up in Infinite Warfare before they won champs, and discussions even that Crim had recently that these guys weren't as committed in their practice as they maybe could have been, maybe should have been, were just insanely talented. They could just win everything anyway, and Crim says they should have won literally everything, but they didn't, because they actually relied on their talent almost too much, but it was still good enough to win the vast majority of things and become that Dynasty team, and arguably, the greatest COD team we've ever seen assembled. But Crim didn't really want to do it with OpTic, and he said, hey, if you guys want to come on my podcast and do it on my show, then sure. But, because he's an interesting character, right? Bit of an enigma, bit difficult to really figure out what Crim is thinking some of the time. And his thought was that, look, I've given a lot to this organization, and I don't just want to come along and, not get paid for my appearance, and then Hex monetizes the content, and it's like, oh, now I'm making, money for OpTic as well, even though I'm not on OpTic anymore. And I feel like at some point Crim might find his way back to OpTic, especially with this. This definitely implies that Crim returning to OpTic at some point is not out of the realms of possibility now that they've all agreed to do this, because it's not like there wasn't any friction between these individuals, especially, look, Scump and Crim, there was drama there. They've resolved that over the last couple of years, and they get on now. Crimsix and FormaL, though, there's still a bit of beef there, so I wonder how, awkward this is going to be, if anything, but apparently, according to Hitch, this is a 2-hour production. I wonder how much of that is going to make the final cut, but apparently they talked for 2 hours here, so it's going to be great, and we can actually see here at the bottom how a couple of things on what Hitch is looking at. Crim Karma viewed as the cold villains, discussing deciding factor. I don't know exactly what you want to read into this, but I'm just going to wait and see what they talk about, really. I'm looking forward to exactly that. But this was the talking points from Crim. This is back in September 2022. Says, the OpTic Dynasty podcast is not going to happen, because Hex wants to do it for his own podcast series. I know that some people are also they're happy that Hitch is hosting this show rather than Hex is hosting the show. I don't really mind either way, but I think that, you really just want to let those 4 guys talk, you know what I mean? It's not about anyone else than the Dynasty members, so I think that Hitch will do a good job of facilitating that. Well, I guess it's already been recorded at this point, right? And Crim also said this before, a couple of years ago now, on the idea of an OpTic Dynasty podcast. If Hex asked you, would you do it? Flat out, no. I was the one who was carried throughout those years, not sure why I'd need to be there. So, this is just Crim doing things in Crim's way. Sounds petty, I know, but I refuse to give people even a second of my time that come at me based off BS. If there's a truth to it all, I will always give the benefit of the doubt to criticism, believe it or not, when it comes to COD. Maybe not outside of it, but the consensus created on me during that time is frankly disgusting. So, you know, as he's saying, like, they say that they carried me and all this stuff, and, you know, whatever. Time has healed some of these wounds, and there was a couple of reasons why Crim didn't want to do it, and clearly now, assuming this image isn't photoshopped, Crim has changed his mind and decided to run it up here. And of course, it was only the other day where Crim was talking with the Stocksman about the fact that he, you know, his biggest regret was joining OpTic, mainly because having left OpTic, a lot of the Green Wall supporters he had left, and therefore the people that supported him for who he was initially are no longer around, which you can justify that either way, whether that's legitimate or not, and whether his content isn't doing so well nowadays, mainly because, you know, it's racing stuff and it's not so intertwined with too many of the competitive Call of Duty fans. But when I saw this quote, I was like, damn, this really is going to be some time until this Dynasty podcast, isn't it? But then we have, you know, seemingly it was recorded potentially at a very similar time. So yeah, looking forward to seeing this. What will they discuss? I'm really looking forward to it, because there are some topics that they might get into here, especially if they just let them talk, and if they didn't have Hitch to kind of moderate, it might go off the rails a little bit, especially between, you can see in this actual image, we've got, you know, FormaL and Crim look at each other, and that is kind of like the biggest potential point of contention I have here. I mean, just for example, this tweet from 2021, but one of the biggest dramas between FormaL and Crim over the last couple of seasons was about the MVP split, and I don't imagine they're going to get into this topic, but I'm sure Crimsix would like to bring it up if he could. If you guys don't know the background on this, during the Infinite Warfare World Championship, there was, you know, 25 grand or whatever it was the prize money for the winner of the MVP trophy for the winning team, and they'd agreed, OpTic, going into the tournament, that whoever won the MVP, they were just going to split that money, and that was like a pact and agreement they had. FormaL won the MVP, and he decided not to split the money with the team. And you can say, oh, it's justified because FormaL was insane, but, you know, if you agree to do something, you should really follow up on it, and Crim was absolutely going off about it at the time, and they had a good fair few matches over their career as well. So, like, I don't know if we're going to get into any stuff like that. If there is any stuff like that, it might get cut out of the final cut anyway, but I'm hoping that we get the most honest and open look at these guys, because this could be, if done correctly, the, you know, the best content of the off-season. So, don't know when it's going to launch yet. I'm sure they'll do something to say, hey, it's launching on this date. Looking forward to it. Absolutely. Just before we close out, a couple of interesting things. Thought this is a pretty crazy stat, actually, from Brian Stats, saying that there's only been 2 players ever that have won their first event as champs, which is actually a really interesting point to think about all the champs winners we've had, that only Attach, who, you know, was 18 years, 2 months old, still the youngest ever World Championship winner in Advanced Warfare, and then Assault in 2018, he hadn't won any events before his World Championship win either, but every other player that's won champs has at least won something else before, which is pretty wild to think about. Over a decade of champs, and even this most recent season, there was thoughts about I think Brian was thinking about, oh, what about Hixie, what about, like, Scrappy or something, but, you know, even if they were to have won champs, they still won Major 3 earlier in the year, so, you know, even they wouldn't have qualified for this had they have got the job done in the end. But very much intrigued to hear your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.